guys, Leatherface here. If you're watching this, then I guess you've seen my new movie or you're at least planning to see it. I just want everyone to know I did my very best to curb my urges. I mean, 70 years cold turkey isn't too bad, let's be honest. All I truly wanted was to be left alone. I mean, how would you like it if someone came into where you live and tried to change everything? It's very toxic behavior, but somehow I'm the bad guy for lashing out. Anyway, I hope everyone's in a place where we can put this all behind us. Hashtag oppressed Leatherface, hashtag don't cancel me. Before I get started, I'd like to kindly ask that you hit the like button and please subscribe to the channel for more content just like this.
All I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
Texas Chainsaw Massacre is the latest legacy horror sequel to hit the mainstream. It is streaming exclusively on Netflix, and that should tell you everything that you need to know. My guess is that they didn't have a lot of confidence in this movie being successful and just sold it to the highest bidder.
I'd buy that for $1.
Now it's going to get thrown into Netflix's rotation and probably be forgotten about in about a week or maybe even a day. The idea behind this movie is very similar to the idea behind Halloween 2018. It's to continue the laziest horror trend that is currently going on and make a direct continuation to the iconic original movie and effectively ignoring what are supposed to be inferior sequels.
No shit.
Remember when horror films were created to set trends, not necessarily to follow them? I miss those days. I've always assumed that the idea behind this trend is to create something similar in tone and quality to the original. Yet for some reason, the trend has yet to produce a movie that is on the level of those originals. So why is this happening? Well, I think one of the biggest reasons is that they're trying to recapture the magic from movies that are very much a product of the time that they were created in. And also, I just don't think they have the same creative horror minds working on these new movies.
That makes sense.
So as a result, they come off as sequels in name only and not the faithful continuations that they want them to be. From a pure slasher perspective, some people are going to find enjoyment in Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2022. It could be considered entertaining at the most basic, blood-soaked level. But if you actually stop and think for a second about what's going on here, you will realize that all those horror elements are being used to distract you from the fact that you're watching a shitty movie.
Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
They did something similar with Halloween Kills, and now they're doing it here as well. If you're trying to sell me on the idea that this is supposed to be a back-to-basics approach, and that you're trying to return the franchise to its roots, then I instantly have to hold your movie to a higher standard. And this is a standard that they have been unable to meet up until this point.
It's over, Anakin! I have the high ground!
I don't know how many people realize this, but there is a surprisingly little amount of blood and gore in the original Texas Chainsaw. Yet this horror legacy sequel, similar to Halloween 2018 and Kills, focused heavily on blood and gore. Now some might say disturbing or creepy atmospheric horror won't work in 2022, and I would respond to that, I think it would work if you had the right people involved. And again, if you don't intend to or are incapable of recapturing that tone, then I don't know what the point is of you making a legacy sequel. And you shouldn't be trying to sell me on the idea that that's what you're doing. You'd be better off just not making the movie at all.
Man, I'm tired of being right.
The tone of this movie is actually much closer to the remake than it is the original. Now, I have a lot of love for the 2003 remake because it's so different in tone from the original. But now the 2022 version feels like a cheap imitation of that. That's right, those horror remakes from the early 2000s that everyone likes to shit on are actually better than the movies we're getting now.
My, how the tables have turned.
I think it's pretty clear at this point that these properties need to be let go unless someone intends to come in and give a fresh perspective on them. But I just don't know that we have anyone creative enough to do that. Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2022 is a generic horror sequel, plain and simple. It follows a group of young people who fancy themselves as activists or even influencers. And they go to this small abandoned town in Texas to try to rebuild it in their image. This causes some issues with the locals, specifically one very deranged local who likes to wear people's faces as a mask. They literally awaken a sleeping giant because they come into someone else's town and start being annoying. And yes, these are painfully annoying characters, and they're generic on top of that. Let's see, you get the blonde, you get the black guy, you get the two sisters, one of which has a traumatic event in her past, and you even have stereotypical redneck background characters.
Whoopie fucking do. Hey, I'm impressed.
Early in this movie, a lot of the younger characters have these conversations about the Confederate flag and how guns should be used. And surprise, surprise, this makes none of them any more interesting. Kind of like their real-life influencer counterparts. And then you have the Laurie Strode of this story, and yes, I'm talking about Sally Hardesty, who feels very much like a old woman Laurie ripoff, and simultaneously is completely useless on top of that. She literally accomplishes nothing in this movie other than being poorly constructed fan service.
I don't care!
And then you have Leatherface himself, who apparently has taken a break from killing people for the last 70 years or so. And he eventually takes up killing again when all these young people come into his town, and the only person who cares about him actually ends up dying when she is removed from her house because of them. Who exactly is the real villain of this story?
I'm having trouble.
Can you imagine if we asked that question in 1974? I would imagine that that would have made Leatherface considerably less menacing than he ended up being. And by the way, he basically looks unrecognizable in his new droopy-faced look. I know a lot of people are going to point to the bus scene as being worth the price of admission. If you enjoyed it, I am glad, but I personally can't get past the cringe that led us into that moment. I never thought in a million years I'd hear lines of dialogue about getting cancelled in a Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie, especially lines that are directed towards Leatherface himself.
Why do these things always happen to me?
Everything about this movie just feels so forced and uninspiring. It feels like they wanted to channel some of that idea from the original, that society has passed this town or this family by, but in typical 2022 fashion, they stumble all over themselves when trying to deliver that message.
Message!
Bottom line is, for me, there is literally no reason for this movie to exist. It brings absolutely nothing to the table and ends up being very forgettable, much like the sequels that they want us to forget about. My advice would be to go watch the original or go watch the 2003 remake if you want good Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Because for me, this franchise should have been left in the past where it belongs. That's why I'm going to give Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2022 the Angry Rocky.
The dreaded stinks!
So have you seen the new Texas Chainsaw Massacre? If you have, let me know what you thought about it in the comments down below. As always, please like, comment, share, subscribe to the channel. Hit that bell for notifications, and I'll see you next time right here on Real Shift. Thanks for watching. Peace out.
Y'all be cool. Shut up.